Welcome to the February 13th meeting of the Rotary Club of Louisville. I'm Luke Schmidt, president of our club and president of Del Rey and the Cardinal Singers, and was often featured as a soloist with the ensemble. He has performed locally with the Kentucky Opera and Louisville Orchestra. Wide awake, I can make my most fantastic dreams come true. My romance doesn't need a thing but you. No love of vain, no dreaming stars, no hideaway, no soft guitar. My romance doesn't need a castle rising in Spain, nor a dance to a constantly surprising refrain. Wide awake, I can make my most fantastic dreams come true. My romance doesn't need a thing but you.
Happy birthday to those Rotarians celebrating a birthday this week. And if you're here today, maybe raise your hand or something so we'll know you're here. John Gregory on February 13th. John's sitting back there. And John, you don't mind if I tell them what you told me? John today is 88 years old. February 16th is Bishop David Reed. February 17th, Mitch Rude. February 18th, Doug Kotke. February 18th, Bob Maddox. And February 19th, Ginger Wallace. I know Ginger's here also. On Wednesday, March 18th, Rotarians can see a performance of Anastasia as well as dinner at the Bristol downtown. An email was sent to all Rotarians with instructions on how to purchase tickets. For more information, contact Kelly Burke. Kelly, you're here somewhere. I saw you earlier. Right there's Kelly if you need information. And now for a couple of the save the dates. Our Rotary Promise Scholar Program is recruiting mentors for the March session on the 3rd, 11th, and 13th of March. Contact Walt Kunow. Walt, where are you at here? Over here. If you have any questions, we always are needing mentors to help with the young people. And our annual Rotary Day at the Downs will be held on Wednesday, April 29th. More details will be coming soon, but please mark your calendars for that. Next Thursday's meeting will be here at the Muhammad Ali Center and will feature Joe Aaron, co-owner of Copper and King. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Okay. Now we have a special presentation today for everybody about our Louisville Rotary Promise Scholarship Program. And we'll start the presentation with a short video. So if you'll please direct your attention to the screen.
Thank you. This is an exciting day. We've kept you up to date on some of the history. I want to go through a brief history about where we are in Promise Scholars, but today's the day we get to announce over $300,000 in grants made from your Rotary Club. So remember that the Rotary Promise Scholarship was developed as our 100th anniversary club gift to the community. It was developed with two major purposes: to increase college going from challenged high schools that we named in particular, and then to improve college degree and certificate completion once they hit community college. It was launched at Western in 2016 and at Iroquois in 2017. Scholarship is a last dollar scholarship, as we just said. It comes from an endowment that was established. We raised $2 million, $1 million from Rotarians and from our friends, $1 million match from the KCTCS Foundation to create an endowment that distributes about $80,000 a year that's available for scholarships. Those students that are eligible had to meet certain academic attendance requirements to be eligible for the grants for these last dollar scholarships. Well, what happened? Well, we identified over 500 scholars, but what we found out was these kids are from poor communities, low-income families, and in fact, they all qualified for full Pell Grants. And at the community college, federal Pell Grants, that covers tuition and books generally, so that we were not spending any of that $80,000 that we were generating a year because of that situation. So over time, a reserve got built up, nearly $400,000 at present of money that's available to spend. So what do we do with it? Well, this year we made some changes in the program. We expanded eligibility to make more students eligible for the grants, and we added a new dimension, which is a $500 payment to each student who completes successfully at least 9 units at Jefferson to pay for non-tuition costs of going to school. At the end of the first semester, we paid out about $14,000, so we anticipate now that we will end up spending about $25,000 of that $80,000, if you will, in these opportunity grants. We hope that increases persistence and completion to degree. Next year, for the current graduating class, all students will be eligible at those two high schools for both the scholarship and the $500 opportunity grant. Another big change, not just those that meet the academic requirements, we're opening it up to everyone. And then the 2021, many of you know, there's a citywide initiative that's providing last dollar scholarships called Evolve 502. Marlon Cole is here, the executive director today. We will fold our scholarship program into Evolve 502 beginning at that time, and our club will pay for students from Western Iroquois to participate in the Evolve 502 program. Importantly, and we'll also talk a little bit about this more, we are going to continue in full both the mentorship program, which you just saw, which we think is having tremendous impact on the students of those two schools, and we are also going to continue the Rotary Promise Honors Program so that the folks that meet academic and behavioral standards will continue to be honored at graduation and otherwise, and in the celebration in this club, although the scholarship will in fact be available to all students at those high schools. Now what about that reserve? This is where we get to the exciting part. So we're planning to announce, and you can see the announcement, are announcing over $300,000 is the number, in grants, special grants, primarily focused on those two high schools that will provide innovative ways to both increase matriculation to college and to complete college. We solicited proposals. A committee was created composed of Rotarians and of representatives from Jefferson, and we approved 7 proposals in total for these grants. So these look like this. They're each for 3 years now, so this 20 selected seniors from Western and Iroquois will be able to attend the Jefferson Community College full-time during their senior year of high school. 140 students altogether over that 3 years. It'll pay the same full tuition for those students, and you can imagine the life change that this means for them, both economically, being able to afford college and having a year done, and academically. 3 grants are focused on special needs groups where we have lower completion at Jefferson than we would like to see. 2 of those grants providing special advising and paid tutoring support for English as a second language students, and another additional one for African American males. An interesting proposal, a 2-day summer camp to be held at the campus for 20 selected students. Many students who want to pursue healthcare careers, and they know all about nursing, but they really don't know what else is available. The idea of this camp is to give them simulated experiences, give them a full breadth of what healthcare careers might be available. The idea being that by firming up their career directions, it will lead to more persistence in college because they'll have clear career aims. For the TAP schools, these are of course young women. We have a proposal that we are going to take faculty out from the college to the TAP high schools in an attempt to interest those young women and inform them about all the opportunities in the technical and construction fields. Automotive, other things, fields opening up to women, advanced manufacturing, and so that's an exciting one as well. We'll be monitoring the success of that program. And lastly, a program there's a teacher at Fairdale High School who happens also to be on the side an adjunct faculty member at the college. And she has proposed that we get Chromebooks for her classroom so the students can both practice math skills and prepare for their exams, which largely are now all online, and get them better prepared and see if we can see some improved test scores. So this is an exciting set of grants. I think it's very innovative. I will tell you that those of us on this committee were tremendously excited by the innovation and the unique things that we're seeing here and exposing students to new fields and getting them excited about finishing college. So I'd like to introduce now Walt Kunow, just to fill in a little bit about what this means for our students.
Hello, my name is Walt Kunow, and I'd like to thank you and Rotary because I have enjoyed giving our students a hand across that have been greeted by many hands reaching back. The Rotary Honors program embodies service above self. Since 2011, this program has an astonishing track record with nearly 2,000 hours of mentoring support given by 1,350 mentors to 3,000 students with almost 100 visits to Western and Iroquois high schools. This year alone, we will volunteer over 400 hours with 60 mentors, 25 first-timers, and serve over 700 students. If you have mentored at Iroquois or Western high schools this year, please stand up. If you have mentored at Iroquois or Western high schools past year, please stand up. You'll catch on. If you've contributed to this scholarship, please stand up. If you have contributed to the Rotary Fund, please stand up and keep standing. If you have read our emails detailing the stories of our students, please stand up. If you thought kindly about this program, please stand up. If you want Walt to stop, because you need to stand up because he's not stopping until everybody stands up. Now give yourselves a hand because it takes everyone in this room to make this program work. There are many people and organizations that give scholarship money, and that's great, but there are far fewer that invest their time in the success of the individual student. Rotary Honors Scholars Program provides hope, and this is what it looks like. John, an Iroquois student, was talking with Tom Crimmins during our summer work session last year. John explained that he started his sophomore year at the Little Loom House, and he made a point of telling us that the most popular song ever, the Happy Birthday song, was written there. He enjoyed his work, but he was looking for a better future. So he moved the next year to MSD, Metro Sewers. And he was a hard worker, and he established himself, and he asked his supervisor to write a letter of recommendation. When I asked him what he planned to do his senior year, he proudly flashed his UPS badge hanging around his neck, where he was co-oping and going to school during the day. His plans were to work at UPS, go to Jefferson on his Rotary Scholarship, and then on to U of L. Unfortunately, John had a medical issue and needed to drop out. but he contacted Rotary and asked for a deferment. Of course, we said yes. Your Rotary is in the habit of saying yes. We're looking for ways to say yes. By funding early college, and I'm telling you, this is game changer. By funding early college, your Rotary is saying yes to our students, many of whom are one misfortune away from getting a big fat no. We are saying yes, you can, in a no, you can't world for our students. Every year at Western, about 5 students graduate from Western Early College program with both their high school diploma and an associate's degree from Jefferson. 2 years ago, we celebrated 16 scholars who finished high school with junior standing in college and no student loan debt. This is game changing. This is why we're doubling down at Western and Iroquois High School with more early college scholarships like Kevin described. This year, we enhanced the high school experience of 5 Western early college students, Reese, Sienna, Eliza, Maya, and Maisha, by recruiting them to volunteer at Educational Justice. Our scholars have a full plate. They have college-level courses, after-school jobs, and responsibilities at home. Now they are tutors to middle schoolers. We are seeing our scholars embody service among self. They all enthusiastically agree that their work with educational justice is important. Their confidence exudes as they talk about how they are looked up to now by these younger students. The smiles that they have and they've shared are imprinted on my mind. Maisha is a goal-oriented, focused student. She wants to become a doctor. To get there, she plans to become a nurse first and save her money for medical school while learning how the body works through her job. Reese, Sienna, Eliza, and Maya each have stories of their own and are shining stars that will make Louisville a better place to live. Who knows, maybe one of these young people will become a teacher, or better yet, a Rotarian. I could go on and on with success stories of Jason, Lakat, Brenda, and Karan. There are so many stories yet to be told. It is with this hope that the Rotary Honor Scholars Program is able to change the trajectory of those that need it most. Ultimately, our program makes education better. We feel a need at Western and Iroquois. We reach a hand across and are meant to build a sense of community where everyone is contributing towards our next generation of neighbors, co-workers, and friends. The Rotary Honor Scholars Program is everything great about Louisville Rotary. Compassionate, energized, and building a better tomorrow. Won't you join us? Thank you.
Thank you very much, both Kevin and Walt. It's hard to believe how far this program has come since it was first announced and pitched many years ago. And it's really amazing how much work's been put into this. I'd like to ask everybody that's on the Rotary Promise Scholars Committee if you would please stand so we can recognize you. A lot of people. Thank you. Okay, and now for the main event, to introduce today's speaker is Julie Schmidt. Julie is the president-elect and also senior director of external affairs at PHT.
Wow, thank you, Walt. Thank you, everyone. I am truly honored to have the opportunity to introduce our guest speaker. A lifelong educator, Dr. Terry Brooks served as a public school administrator. In fact, it is whispered he was a high school principal at Iroquois long ago, for 3 decades in Jefferson, Hardin, and Oldham counties, and also Anchorage Independent School. A forward thinker and innovator, he has been engaged in efforts of leading qualitative research and implementing change toward the advancement of teaching and learning. His work has been cited in a number of prominent publications, and he served as adjunct professor at Harvard, Vanderbilt, and Bellarmine universities. In 2005, Dr. Brooks was tapped to lead the Kentucky Youth Advocates, better known as KYA. Under Brooks' bold leadership, KYA has emerged as the Commonwealth's lead organization advocating for children and their families, advocating for important policy change, in health, child welfare, education, early childhood, and juvenile justice. And KYA, with Dr. Brooks at the helm, has built an impactful coalition of nonprofits, health organizations, and individuals, all dedicated to improving the well-being of Kentucky's kids and their futures. A passionate Louisville Cards fan and tireless advocate. If you ever are in Frankfort, you will see Dr. Brooks. He's always there. Please welcome Dr. Brooks to the stage.
Thanks, Julie. I'll just tell you that from my perspective, and I guess is the folks from the Iroquois Western table, the main event just happened. Okay, so you guys deserve such credit. My day is already made because the president reminded me that tomorrow is Valentine's Day. Thank you so much. And if you would leave the candy on the table, I would collect that and not have to stop anywhere this evening. So, the first time that I heard about Kayla Montgomery was in a sermon podcast from the noted theologian Max Lucado. The very next week, I was flipping through my 4 favorite channels, ESPN, ESPN2, ESPN2, and the ACC network, and there was an E60 special on Kayla Montgomery. Both the sermon and the ESPN special began the same way. The starter pistol sounded at Mount Tabor High School in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and it described the journey of Kayla, who at the age of 14 had collapsed on a soccer field. The diagnosis of heat exhaustion was wrong. It turned out that sadly she had MS, and that threatened her career as a cross-country runner. But she didn't let it stop her. What she did learn was that the beginning of the race went well. The pain began at mile 1. By mile 2, she went numb, could not feel her legs. She could continue to run, but she couldn't stop. The only way she could stop at the end of the race was to fall, was to collapse. But that didn't stop her because Patrick Cromwell, her coach, found the secret. As she approached the finish line, he raced to the finish line, and he caught her before she fell. She went on to win the North Carolina High School Cross Country Championship, went to Lipscomb in Nashville on a college scholarship, was successful at the NCAA level. But the power in that is Coach Cromwell catching a kid before she fell. I mean, that's what you just heard, isn't it? That's what you're doing at Iroquois and Western. You're catching those kids before they fall. Before we talk about that challenge of catching kids before they fall, I think it's important that you understand the context, not just of Western or Iroquois or Jefferson County, but what's the state of kids in Kentucky? That same question was asked nationally by UPS some 30 years ago, as UPS began to engage in its philanthropic work at a greater level. They wanted to know what was the data scene when it came to kids in America. They heard a lot of stories, they heard a lot of vignettes, they heard a lot of philosophies. They didn't hear a lot about data. And if you know anything about UPS, you know UPS isn't just interested in, they're obsessed with data. They really want to know how long it takes that package car driver to get from his or her truck to your front porch and back in that vehicle and on the road. So UPS invented the gold standard for assessing how kids in America do, and it's called Kids Count. Every state has a research think tank. KYA is it for Kentucky. And we measure everything when it comes to kids in Kentucky. You have a kids count book on your table that is not great reading for enjoyment, but it's a lot of data. I want to just give you some highlights. You know, Julie mentioned at this time of year, whether you're a Cardinal fan or, you know, I guess some of you wear other colors, we're getting ready for March, where we're all interested in being number one. Well, you know, sadly, what Kentucky is number one in when it comes to kids is the rate of abuse and neglect. My friend Keith Inman has heard this example way too often, but less than 3 blocks away, if you think about the Young Center being filled to capacity, but instead of Cardinal fans, they're victims of child abuse in the last 12 months. There's not enough room for all the kids who have been abused in the last 12 months fitting to the Young Center. Or we're number one when it comes to the number of children who have had to leave their parents to live with grandma and grandpas. In fact, Kentucky has over 100,000 kids today living in kinship care. And while we celebrate those grandmas and grandpas and other relatives taking care of those kids, none of us can miss the fact that if there was not a crisis and a tragedy in that home, those young people would not be with grandma and grandpa. Or think about this. As we sit here today, more than 1 in 10, in fact 13% of kids in Kentucky have parents who are incarcerated. The third highest rate in the nation. We talk about that as a shared sentence because as impactful as it is for that mom or dad being locked up, imagine what that means for those children. The news on Kentucky's kids, in many ways, is a good news, bad news proposition. As an example, we have seen significant improvements in child poverty over the last 3 to 4 years. There's been real gains there, and we need to celebrate that, but we also cannot forget that over 230,000 kids in the Commonwealth today live in deep poverty. We can't forget that while this number has improved, as the economy has improved over the last few years, that over 37% of kids in Kentucky live in homes where neither parent has secure employment, meaning full-time, year-round with benefits. And what I can tell you is that is not cases where mom and dad are not working. Those are cases where mom and dad are working 2 or 3 jobs. So think about that, what that means, just in terms of family life normalcy. We have educators sitting here, and again, the trend line on issues like high school graduation are positive to be sure, but let's not lose the broader context. As we sit here today in Kentucky, fewer than 1 out of 3 third graders meet the minimal proficiency standards to read, and fewer than 2 in 10 8th graders meet the minimum proficiency standards for math. Now, I've got 8 grandkids, and all 5 school-age kids are JCPS students. And what I know is when they graduate, they don't have to just compete with their peers in Louisville or Prestonsburg or Paducah, but they've got to compete on a national and international basis. And you can't look at those numbers. Less than 1 in 3, less than 2 in 10 meeting minimal performance standards. So while there's good news, there's plenty of challenges. So whether you're looking at child welfare or juvenile justice, a system that's set by racial disproportionality, or economic well-being, or any range of issues that touch kids, The message that I would give you today is the kids in Louisville and kids throughout Kentucky absolutely need folks who are willing and able to catch them before they fall. I want to challenge you to think about catching kids before they fall at really two different levels. You know, I'm someone who believes that we have to have grass top and grassroots action. Far too many people focus on here or on there, and we at KYA are big on the conjunction and. We need both of them. I could talk about some action in Washington. Frankly, I could talk about some lack of action in City Hall. But what I would like to do is highlight some really good work that is happening in Frankfurt. I mean, isn't it easy in the world in which we live to think about the bifurcation, the toxicity that besets the scene in Frankfurt and think about nothing is getting done? Well, that's just not the case. So we're in the middle of the 2020 General Assembly. KYA and over 100 other groups throughout Kentucky have a strong policy and legislative agenda. Here's the report card so far. 13 pieces of legislation have passed one chamber or another. Right now, every priority bill for kids has passed. We're batting 100%. And we're not just batting 100%. If you add up the numbers and take those 13 pieces of legislation collectively, we've achieved 97% yeses with only 3% of senators and representatives vote no when it comes to kids. So don't believe the mythology that nothing can get done in Frankfurt. We're talking about key issues of protecting kids from abuse. We're talking about fundamental reforms in public education policy. We're talking about some profound changes, especially in juvenile justice. So when you think about that grass top effort, I want to offer you hope, and I want to just say publicly that many of your senators and many of your representatives are in fact catching kids before they fall. But you and I both know that they can do everything they want in Washington or in Frankfurt or in City Hall, and that's still not going to get the job done. So again, shout out to you Rotarians, because clearly, you guys are catching kids before they fall. We have some folks here that I want to spotlight. I already mentioned Keith Inman. Kosare Charities, beginning in 2013, talked about the idea that over 50 years ago, they were a key player in eliminating polio, and they wanted to be a key player in eliminating abuse and neglect in Kentucky. So the charities introduced the BASIC campaign to end child abuse. Since that began, Keith and his colleagues, they batted 100% in Frankfurt. They passed 14 critical pieces of legislation. I wanted to give you just one because it sort of highlights the common sense nature. I should have known this, and frankly I didn't. We discovered that the one piece of data that school systems in Kentucky were not required to check was the child abuse register. So they were hiring teachers and coaches and counselors and custodians and not looking whether they had ever perpetrated abuse. That's no longer the case because of Kosare Charities. Just last year, the charities served 67,612 kids specifically to stop abuse and neglect, and they reached 135,000 families. That's what I call catching kids before they fall. Or you think about Frank and Paula Harshaw, and Frank is very public in that he grew up in the child welfare system. And the Harshaws have used their time and talent and treasure to change the landscape, literally the landscape for child welfare in Kentucky. Because of Frank and Paula's efforts, kids in foster care now can get a driver's license. Kids in foster care have their own Bill of Rights that ensures that as they age out, they get the appropriate supports they need. The Harshaws have organized a group of young people who themselves are involved in child welfare or who are alumni of the child welfare system. Those young people are in Frankfurt frequently, testifying before committees, moving the hearts and the minds of legislators. So Frank and your fellow Rotarian Paula, they're catching kids in the child welfare system who frankly may have fallen, but they're making sure that they're lifting them up. I think about Norma Hatfield. Norma waving to the crowd. And Norma is very public about this, so I'm not sharing any secrets that she wouldn't want me to share. She talks about she and her husband were empty nesters. They were all psyched up because their bags were packed because they were taking their grandkids to Disney the next day. And then she got the call. One of those grandkids ingested meth, and she learned that her kids had been taken, her grandkids had been taken from their home. I think the phrase she uses, and she knew that life would never be the same because she began raising her grandkids. Well, that alone is catching kids before they fall, but Norma was not content for that. Instead, she's organized kinship givers from throughout Kentucky into a kinship coalition. I believe we've dubbed them, with her permission, the Granny Underground. And I have to tell you that legislators may not be afraid of you or me or a lobbyist, but when they see Norma and this string of grandmas coming at them, you know, the only thing I've ever heard them say is, yes, ma'am. So, Norma Hatfield catches kids in her own family, but catches kids throughout Kentucky before they fall. Or we got Alec Young here. Alec is a sophomore at St. X, made a significant sacrifice today because you notice he's not at school. He's eating meatloaf at the Ollie Center. 9 years ago, KYA began an effort to eliminate corporal punishment in schools. We may not know that in Louisville, but in 40% of the school districts in Kentucky, you still spank kids. What that means is that Kentucky, North Korea, Cuba, and Iraq are about the only places left where you can hit kids with inanimate objects in school. Alec got the bug 4 years ago, just recently testified before the House Education Committee, and that piece of legislation is moving where we really believe that this is going to be the year that we eliminate corporal punishment in all 176 school districts in Kentucky. How about that? Alec Young is catching his peers that he doesn't even know before they fall. Thanks, Alec. So you get the message, and frankly, that opening program stole most of my mustard, didn't it? Because you're already catching kids. But I do want to challenge you to think even more boldly about what that could mean. I mean, is it your adult Sunday school class finding a kinship family and providing regular respite care? Or is it connecting with one of the residential facilities in this community and saying we really are going to ensure that when those young people age out of the child welfare system, they know how to open a bank account? They have the clothes they need to go to college or to a workplace. Maybe it's getting involved with the juvenile court system and working with the far too many kids who have already been trapped by the judicial system. So again, you get it as a Rotary Club, that is very clear. What I hope you hear today is opportunities abound to catch kids before they fall. A great observer of the social scene is a guy named Ted Sizer, who was a noted education reformer long ago. And Ted Sizer once wrote that when it comes to children, we face a blizzard of opportunities and of obligations. Can I just respectfully suggest that catching kids before they fall is both an opportunity and an obligation. Thanks so much.
We have time for a couple of questions. If you'd like to come to the mic, and we appreciate all you and your team do, Terry. It's very heartfelt. Any questions at all? Okay. President Luke? Oh, you did have one here.
Harry, I'm John Morris, neighbor next to me, Pat Administration.
Yes.
I remember working with you back then.
Yes, sir.
And you said all 13 of these are.
Those are budget requests, I believe. What we, you can go, I think, I can't see what you got. Do you have the budget?
I have this document that you have on the table, Blueprint for Kentucky's Children.
Yeah, okay. On that side, yes, sir. Those are the ones that are moving.
So we're going to get a state refundable earned income tax.
That's not one of the ones that have been brought yet. We would hope that that's part of the budget discussion. You want me to talk about that for a second?
I do, and the other thing I want you to talk about is this idea that we're hearing out of the Republican legislature that we're going to have some reduction in the cliff, the Medicaid cliff, where you drop off at some point, you can't afford to go to work unless the job has health insurance coverage because you lose your Medicaid coverage.
Okay.
Thanks.
What was asked about was the earned income tax credit. Kentucky Advocates has been and continues to be a vigorous supporter of that. It's a tax idea. How about this? The four big champions are Ronald Reagan, George Bush, Bill Clinton, and Barack Obama. Do you know any other tax idea that has that support? What it means is that if I'm a working family, I just get to keep more of my money. I get a tax credit. We have that at the federal level. We don't have that at the state level. What we know is that families who get an EITC refund generally do not put that in their hedge fund on an offshore account. Instead, they get their car repaired, they get clothes for their kids, they get a new appliance. That money is spent in the local economy. National Council of Mayors says that for every dollar that comes back to families, over $2 is put in the marketplace. So it's a tax idea that President Stivers, Speaker Osborne, and Andy Beshear should all agree on. It's an idea that puts money directly back into working families, and it actually does not become a budget buster. The benefit cliff notion that was mentioned is applicable not just to health care, but it's also especially relevant to child care. And that is the way that families are reimbursed right now for public assistance is that if you really look at the kitchen table economics, and I'm on full welfare benefits right now, and I get a decent but not great job, okay? So I'm unemployed, I have an opportunity to get a good but not great job. Because I suddenly lose those benefits, both child care, health insurance, etc., I wind up losing money. For my family, I can provide better economically by not getting into the workforce. What is being discussed, and I think it's bipartisan, differences, is can't we find a way to bridge that gap so that we actually encourage folks to get into the workforce rather than inadvertently discouraging? I hope that answers. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Terry. Thanks for all the great work that you're doing across the state on behalf of children. It's a hugely important issue. I want to thank all of our guests today for attending, all of the people from the Education Committee, your community. We really appreciate all the work that you're doing. I'm happy to see that we had a heckle-free meeting today, and last week. And with that, reminder, we have the Rotary table outside, and with that, we're adjourned.